Good evening. Tonight, ministers from the Southwest recommend thorough investigation by the federal government of the military's role in the Lekki tollgate shooting and bringing culprits to justice. Judicial panel set up by the National Human Rights Commission to investigate alleged abuses by the disbanded Special Anti-Robbery Squad commenced sitting, receives 148 petitions. INEC seeks lawmakers' approval of 40 billion naira 2021 budget for its expenses ahead of the 2023 general elections. Commission to spend 1 billion naira on voter registration in the first quarter of next year. And tension mounts as the wait for the outcome of the US presidential election continues, with millions of votes yet to be counted, plus business and sports and later. News from our London studios.
On Business News tonight, Senate Committee on Capital Market pledges support for Nigeria's capital market to boost investor confidence.
On Sports News tonight, World Anti-Doping Agency apologizes and agrees to pay damages to France international defender Amadou Sakho for an unfair doping ban in 2016.
Ministers from the Southwest are asking for support from the Central Bank of Nigeria or any other funding mechanism to support small and medium businesses affected by the looting and arson which took place in Lagos and other parts of the country in the aftermath of the End SARS protests. This formed part of the recommendations by the ministers to the Federal Executive Council today. The Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, told State House correspondents after the virtual Federal Executive Council meeting. The Council also approved additional 47.5 billion naira for Oyo-Ogbomosho Highway, 9.3 billion naira for the bridge across the River Benue, linking it with Nasarawa State.
The highlight of the brief was to make recommendations to the federal government to support Lagos State to restore and reconstruct damaged facilities, especially those related to the maintenance of law and order, such as the administration and the administration of justice, such as police stations, court buildings, and the forensic laboratory, to also consider support the Lagos High Court judges, either by the provision of some office accommodation as a temporary location when that request is made, because it was hinted during the visit, to also urge the federal government to consider short to medium-term assistance to small and medium businesses who were affected by the looting and arson which took place in Lagos and in other parts of the country, to see if this can be done through the central bank intervention mechanism under the COVID-19 funding or any other related funding mechanism. We also urge that the federal government should support or undertake the thorough investigation into what happened at the Lekki Toll Plaza, and in particular the role of the military, and to ensure that the outcome is made public with a view to achieving closure of the matter.
Meanwhile, the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, is rolling out his plans for rebuilding the state after the destruction carried out by rampaging youths following the End SARS protests. The governor has set up an 8-man Lagos Rebuild Trust Fund committee that will oversee the rebuilding process and keep track of funds which will help the state bounce back. The trust fund bill is to be sent to the State Assembly to give legal backing to the initiative.
Our government will be sending a bill to the Lagos State House of Assembly for the establishment of a trust fund to rebuild Lagos. However, with the deluge of offers of immediate help and assistance that we have received both locally and internationally, we can no longer wait until when we pass this very important bill. It is expedient that our enumeration, our recovery process, and our rebuilding effort should start as soon as possible. I will be signing an executive order to set up an 8-man Lagos Rebuild Trust Fund Committee, which will, as a matter of urgency, begin to oversee our recovery process. The committee will have a chairman and will have 5 other members from the private sector and 2 from the public sector, including a member from the international donor community. I can assure you of the committee's utmost commitment to the reconstruction and the upgrading of our dear state. In these challenging but interesting times, we realize that we have the potent opportunity to reform our state and to upgrade our structures.
More reactions are trailing the recent meeting of the Northern Governors Forum, with the coalition of northern groups criticising the forum for what they describe as failure to address the more serious issues affecting the region. They claim that the agenda of the meeting, which held in Kaduna and focused on the EndSARS protests and social media, was of less importance to the development of the area. The CNG expressed disappointment that the meeting also lacked the courage to make clear pronouncements on the issues surrounding the EndSARS protests. The group's position was made known at a news conference in Kaduna.
The CNG and indeed the vast majority of the cultured northerners are disappointed that such a meeting of northern governors and traditional leaders, elected representatives and top federal government officials from the north should find it more important to dwell on EndSARS and social media and neglect the more serious issues of security, youth restiveness, unemployment, poverty, dwindling fortunes of agriculture and general economic decline. 2, we are disappointed that such a meeting should lack the courage to make clear pronouncements on the unprovoked attacks on northerners and their properties at a time when their southern counterparts are proposing claims of trillions of naira in compensation for their people. Number 3, we are disappointed that the meeting lacked the requisite statesmanship to define the northern position with regards to the falsified reports around the fictitious attacks on Lekki protesters that is causing the nation international worries. It is disappointing that the meeting failed to see as priority the need to send a delegation to ascertain the extent of damage and to console the affected northerners in the southern states.
Staying with more stories in the EndSARS protest aftermath, the International Criminal Court says it is conducting a preliminary examination into the recent EndSARS protests in Nigeria. In a statement obtained by the BBC, the Office of the ICC prosecutor explains that it has received information on alleged crimes. It adds that the examination will assess whether the legal criteria for opening an investigation under the Rome Statute are met. For weeks, crowds of peaceful protesters gathered in streets in major towns of the country to demonstrate against police brutality leading to a crackdown. Rights group Amnesty International says security forces opened fire on protesters, killing and injuring a number of people. Both the police and the army have rejected Amnesty's allegation. The ICC says it would make findings of the preliminary examinations public. Meanwhile, the Judicial Panel of Inquiry inaugurated by the National Human Rights Commission to investigate alleged abuses of the defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad has commenced sitting in the FCT High Court. The chairman of the panel, Justice Sulaiman Galadima, says that a total of 148 petitions have been received so far. He was speaking at the inaugural sitting of the panel, where he promised that the committee would ensure justice is served to all parties.
Victims of police brutality in the nation's capital can now seek justice as the Judicial Panel of Inquiry, inaugurated by the National Human Rights Commission, begins sitting in Abuja. The Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission highlights the panel's terms of reference.
The panel has been established with the mentioned terms of reference, namely, to investigate allegations of human rights violations and abuse of power made against the defunct SARS and other units of the Nigerian police force, to make recommendations as to the damages or compensation payable in relation to any violation of human rights where it deems this necessary in the circumstance, refer any matter of human rights violation requiring prosecution to the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, as the case may be. The panel is also to make recommendations to government on measures to be taken in respect of operatives of defunct SARS or other officers of the Nigerian police force, if any, found in violation of human rights of citizens. Propose remedial steps that may enhance the professional conduct of defunct SARS operatives and succeeding units and other members of the Nigerian police force, and any other recommendations that may be considered appropriate.
For the petitioners, the chairman of the panel promises to adjudicate without technicalities.
Our panel will endeavor in every respect to abide by the rules of natural justice, will be fair and just to all manner of persons who appear before us as petitioners, complainants, respondents, and so on.
The Solicitor General of the Federation, on his part, assures Nigerians that the federal government will implement recommendations of the panel.
Let me assure Nigerians that the federal government is committed to its primary responsibility of protecting lives and properties of the citizens, and is also putting in place critical measures to avoid such unethical and inhuman conduct of some officers of the Nigerian police force.
The 11-man panel is expected to attend to 148 petitions chronicling alleged human rights abuses by some members of the defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS.
And now to the South-South region, where the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has continued his visits to police formations that were destroyed during the recent attack on some stations in different parts of the country. Today, the IGP is in Edo State to assess the level of damage done to the stations. The police chief is accompanied by other top hierarchy of the force.
The Iwioto police station on Dumais Road off Sapele Road in Benin City, the Edo State capital. One of the 5 divisions attacked following hoodlums hijacking the peaceful NSAS protest some weeks ago. It's one of the scenes of destruction the Inspector General of Police, IGP Mohammed Adamu, has come to inspect in the state. Top police officers, as well as the Deputy Governor of the state, Philip Shaibu, are with the IGP on the inspection. Ubekam Police Division recorded damage as well. The tour of areas of destruction continues, from burnt police stations to the Nigerian Correctional Service Custodial Center on Sapele Road. The team also stops at the University of Benin Teaching Hospital, where one of the 11 policemen injured in the attack is still receiving treatment. There's another stop at the state headquarters of the police command. Senior officers and rank and file gave attention to the IGP as he speaks to them on matters of protection and the law.
We should never be demoralized. We should be resilient. All that happened in terms of attacks on the police station should not stop us from coming out to perform our constitutional duties. But while we are performing these constitutional duties, we must also protect ourselves, because every policeman is a human being, and you are also entitled to human rights protection. So you use your firearms in a lawful manner.
Information on welfare issues, including the provision that retired police officers are now to enjoy health insurance scheme, is shared.
I'm working with the Police Service Commission. All those that were injured or they lost their lives, they are going to get promotion to the next level. In order to encourage us, Mr. President, 2 weeks ago, has approved the adjustment of our salaries to a higher grade for all officers.
The IGP's visit and assurances given lifts the spirits of the policemen and women of the command, who maintain that they remain undaunted in the fight against crime. Just Lubuse, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, INEC to spend 1 billion naira on voter registration in the first quarter of 2021. That's in a moment. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder about top stories. Ministers from the Southwest recommend thorough investigation by the federal government of the military's role in the Lekki tollgate shooting to bring culprits to justice. Judicial panel set up by the National Human Rights Commission to investigate alleged abuses by the disbanded Special Anti-Robbery Squad commenced sitting, received 148 petitions. INEC seeks lawmakers' approval of 40 billion naira 2021 budget for its expenses ahead of the 2023 general elections. Commission to spend 1 billion naira on voter registration in first quarter of next year. And tension mounts as the wait for the outcome of the U.S. presidential election continues, with millions of votes yet to be counted. We continue in Edo State, where the police chief, the Inspector General of Police, rounded off his trip to Edo State with a visit to the state governor, Mr. Godwin Obaseki. Governor Obaseki appealed to the Inspector General of Police to ensure that he rearrests inmates who escaped from the prisons and that those behind the attacks on police formations are brought to book. And in their brainstorming session, community policing again comes to the fore.
Said no, we don't accept that.
Now, for a third time in the last 1 month, the conciliation meeting between the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, and the federal government has failed to address the issues that led to the lingering strike that has crippled learning in federal universities for 7 months. Now, at the resumption of the meeting in Abuja today, both the president of ASU and the Labour Minister expressed hope that the teething issues would be addressed once and for all. However, the meeting, which was poorly attended by government representatives, failed to arrive at a resolution as the Minister of Labour and Employment told journalists that the government's conciliatory team would meet again on Friday to present a final position on the lecturers' demands.
November 2020, the federal government is meeting again with the academic staff.
Members, we have an agenda which has been circulated, and we will take off from the agenda and do justice to it. Overall, our intention and our aim for all of us here is for us to get this strike to an end. We have to get the strike to an end so that you will resume your work and the students will benefit from the teaching you have for them as their lecturers. And like I said the last time, some people found the students at home and very easy recruits during the NSAS protest.
To all the stories now, the presidential election in Nigeria may be 3 years away, but it appears the nation's electoral umpire wants to hit the ground running as early as possible. To this end, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, wants the National Assembly to approve 40 billion naira in the 2021 budget to cover various expenses ahead of the polls. Professor Yakubu stated this during a budget defense session with the Senate Committee on INEC. Out of the 40 billion naira, the Commission is earmarking the sum of 1 billion naira for voter registration in the first quarter of next year. Our correspondent Linda Akigbe reports.
I want to thank the First Lady.
The eyes of the world are currently on the U.S. elections. But back home in Nigeria, electoral umpire INEC is looking for ways to improve the electoral process ahead of the country's 2023 general elections. INEC chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu, who appeared before the Senate Committee on INEC to defend the Commission's budget, wants the National Assembly to approve 40 billion naira in the 2021 budget to cover personnel costs, oversight, by-elections and numerous litigations. He's also seeking approval for extra spending.
We have what is called the INEC Fund. So in 2010, the fund was established under the Act. The money has been saved since 2010. It hasn't been touched, but we believe that now is the rainy day for us to look at the fund to see how we can augment the budgetary appropriation.
After the budget defense session, Professor Yakubu announces a timetable for voter registration and tells journalists his views on diaspora voting.
For continuous voter registration, the Commission intends to resume in the first quarter. The Commission intends to resume voter registration in the first quarter of next year. And once we resume, it will be continuous for 1.5 years, at least until 6 months to the next general election. On diaspora voting, you are preaching to the converted. The Commission is desirous of giving Nigerians living abroad the right to vote. After all our neighboring countries do so, but it requires amendments to the Constitution and the Electoral Act for that to happen.
Meanwhile, there was mild drama when Professor Yakubu appeared before the House of Representatives Committee on INEC. Just before he presents the Commission's 2020 budget performance, a member of the committee raises a point of order, noting what he terms the uncooperative nature of the Commission.
We have had an opportunity to oversee the 2020 budget. No oversight of any kind. Things need to be done properly. And
all right.
Hold on, Chairman, just a minute. And I'm saying this because there's a lot of discontent amongst my colleagues. Okay?
No problem.
I can see that even the Vice Chairman is not here.
No problem.
We need to do some, Chairman, we need to do some housekeeping.
Listen to me, please, yes. Honorable Bob. We are still going on oversight. 2020 has been a year of COVID-19.
But before that, Chairman,
no, please, I rule you out of order. Please, I am the chairman of the order. I rule you out of order. Chairman INEC, please continue your proposal.
The committee goes into a closed-door session.
I may crave your indulgence, Chairman, and also the honorable commissioners that will have this brief execution with the chairman.
Speaking to journalists after the closed-door meeting, INEC chairman discloses that electronic voting could be introduced for the Anambra governorship election in 2021. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
And to some legal stories, a federal high court in Abuja has fixed the 16th of November 2020 for hearing in an alleged perjury suit instituted against the governor of Edo State, Mr. Gordon Obaseki, by the All Progressives Congress. At the mention of the suit, counsel to the plaintiffs, Mr. Akin Olujimi, informed the court that the matter was for mention and asked for a definite date for hearing. The plaintiffs had dragged Mr. Obaseki to court seeking a declaration that his claim of obtaining a degree from the University of Ibadan is false. Counsel to Mr. Obaseki, however, informed the court that he had filed a motion and notice challenging the competence of some processes contained in the suit. Justice Ahmed Mohammed reminded parties on the matter that the suit was filed on the 14th of July 2020, and being a pre-election matter, it has a lifespan of 180 days, which will terminate in January 2021. In the meantime, the National Industrial Court has ordered the Kogi State government to pay the former Deputy Governor Simon Achuba the sum of 180 million naira as outstanding security votes from April 2018 to August 2019 within 30 days or pay 30% interest monthly. However, Mr. Achuba's prayer that he be paid the sum of 328,032,000 naira as his entitled imprest was dismissed as read by Justice Oyebiola Oyewumi. And the Nigerian Medical Association in Cross River State has embarked on an indefinite strike over the kidnapping of one of its colleagues, Dr. Godwin Udo. The chairman of the state chapter, Dr. Innocent Abang, told Channels Television that Dr. Udo was abducted from his residence in Calabar November the 1st, Sunday. He adds that the association had earlier stated that any time a medical doctor is kidnapped, it will embark on an indefinite strike until he or she is released. Meanwhile, the police public relations officer also confirmed the incident, gave the assurance that steps are being taken to secure his release. And some cherry news for domestic and industrial consumers of electricity in Ogun State, as the state government has signed a memorandum of understanding with a United Kingdom energy provider to generate 250 megawatts of electricity in the state. Governor Dakwa Abiodun said this is imperative in order to unleash the industrial potential of the state, while promising genuine investors in the state a favorable business environment. The governor stated this during the signing of the MOU and the visit of the UK's Deputy High Commissioner to the Government House in Abuja, the state capital.
There's no doubt that if we're able to be self-sufficient in the area of energy provision, it would unlock the potential that this state has. This state has the potential of being not just the industrial capital of this country, the agri capital of this country. We're already the education capital of this country. Today, we're the highest producer of cassava in this country. We are the highest producer of poultry in this country. And we practically feed this country in terms of birds, chicken, you know. There's no doubt that electricity will just unlock and unleash the potentials that this state has.
And speaking to journalists immediately after the meeting, the Deputy British High Commissioner, Mr. Ben Lenolin Jones, commended the commitment of the state government to the project.
We are focusing here in Ogun State on up to 250 megawatts and affecting positively up to 50,000 residents and customers. So this is the initial step here in Ogun State that we would like to begin with, but we believe that as we prove the concept here in Ogun State, it will grow across the entire state.
When the news at 10 returns, the wait for the winner of the U.S. presidential election continues amidst tension, with millions of votes yet to be counted. To join us again. And former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden has won 248 electoral votes so far in yesterday's presidential election, narrowing Donald Trump's prospects of making the needed 270 electoral votes to win the election. Biden's win in the state of Wisconsin caused a major break in the race towards the required 270 electoral college votes and widening his path to the presidency compared to Trump's 214 votes. Earlier, the president alleged electoral fraud going on in the state. His campaign says they will request a recount in the battleground state. Wisconsin chief election official Megan Wolf has rejected the allegation of fraud. Now, 2 out of the 9 Nigerians running for various offices in the United States elections on Tuesday have won their elections. Oye Owolewa and Esther Agbaje have been elected in both states and National House of Representatives.
9 Nigerian Americans are on the ballot for various elective offices in the U.S., and so far, only 2 of them have been announced winners in their elections. Oye Owolewa from Kwara State has won, he was running to represent Washington, D.C. District of Columbia. He won by 135,234 votes against his challenger, Robinson Paul. The other person is Esther Agbaje, a 35-year-old daughter of a priest and a librarian, both Nigerian immigrants. Esther ran on the platform of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party and won the seat for District 59B in the Minnesota House of Representatives with 17,396 votes. When we spoke to her on Tuesday, she already had a plan of action for the constituency.
Running for office was really just kind of a culmination of the types of public service I've done, and also just seeing that we needed to have decision makers at the table that really understood the struggles of working people, particularly working families, students who have recently graduated, dealing with student debt, and particularly in the housing crisis. Here in Minnesota, even before the pandemic started, we had a housing crisis, and our answer to people if they didn't have enough money for a place to live was they had to be out on the street. So that was something that in my volunteer work, I've been advising tenants who are facing eviction, and that's something that I look forward to working on in the State House should I be elected today.
Yomi Fakparusi and Yinka Faliti both lost their elections. But there's been no word on Paul Akijo in California, Adewumi Kuforiji in Delaware, April Ademiluyi, Ngozi Akubuike, and Benjamin Osemenam in their respective states.
Congratulations to the winners. Well, joining us now is former Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi. He joins us from Abuja studios. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10. Tell us, what are your thoughts on how the election is going in the United States?
Well, I think it's gone reasonably well. You will recall that in the run-up to the election, there were a tremendous amount of concerns and fears of voter intimidation, voters suppression, and so many other things that were instigated as a result of the pronouncement of the President of the United States. But at the end of the day, I think that America has lived up to expectation in the sense that the process has gone very well. And in every election, what is most critical is for the process to run very well as expected, by the rules governing the game itself. And so as we watch the results come in, or the remaining results, I think Americans should be very proud that despite all the fears, they've lived up to expectation, and they should simply wait and allow the process to run itself out.
I imagine you do have some thought on the candidates in the lead, Joe Biden, who apart from leading in the electoral votes, is also leading in popular votes. Now, President Trump is refusing to accept results in some states. How do you see this panning out at the end of the day?
It was expected. The president had made it very clear. And if you understand and if you watch Donald Trump in the last couple of years and even before now in his business dealings, Donald Trump never gives up. Donald Trump fights for what he believes is his right. And I think he's entitled to, to that. But the most important thing is that the process has gone on very well. The countings are still going on. There has been no evidence at all of any electoral malpractices. So the president and his supporters should simply calm down. As a matter of fact, some of these issues, the delays experienced in the states, would not have occurred if the Republican party had not gone to court to challenge the process itself that delayed, for example, the sending of ballot papers, to the counting stations and the rest. So I just think that we all need, including those watching from outside the United States, we all need to exercise patience and grateful that the process has gone on very well.
So as international partners, I mean, looking at a country that has boasted about its democracy, do you see similarities or lessons that we can learn? What do you think the international community is seeing from the U.S. elections?
Well, I think for us here, there are a couple of lessons that can be learned from what has just happened. But the most important thing, one, I think it's what I keep emphasizing, the process. Bear in mind, as I said earlier, before the election, there were concerns being expressed, all over the world. Number one, whether the president would actually give up power if he leaves this. Number two, given some of the antics that the Republican Party, put up, and the pronouncements of the president that indicated, that tried to disenfranchise people or discourage people from doing early voting and the rest, it came as a surprise that everything has gone reasonably well. And I think for us, a number of lessons that we should learn is that let's ensure that our process goes on very well. If our process goes on very well, I'm not too sure that we have all the kinds of problems that we do experience in our own election. And I think in your news this evening, you did announce that INEC is asking for billions of naira to begin to prepare for the next election. I believe INEC can actually reduce the amount of money it's asking for election if it does one or two things, copying, imitating what they do in the United States. There's no need to set a date, for example, on registration. In the United States and a number of countries, registration is a daily ongoing affair. You just get up, go to somewhere, you register, and some people, in some countries, they register for election up to the date of the election itself. So let's not create this. When you create the kind of system we have here, it's very costly. And sometimes people don't take it too seriously. But when you make it liberal and ensure that you can actually walk into some place, a post office as they do in Botswana or somewhere, and register on a daily basis, that would certainly be far more easier than asking for billions every time we have an election. Look at the amount of money we're going to spend for an election. It's probably going to be more than just the budget for health or education. And that's because of the, the kind of system we have when you begin to look deeply into our electoral process. But as I said, if you study not just the U.S., but the advanced democracies, there are a few things we can learn. And we can use those things to improve on our own system and practices. That's the most important thing. Once an election is deemed to be free and fair by the voters and the people, nobody is going to go fighting or shout all over the place that is being rigged.
We appreciate your time.
And that's one of the things that we have to learn.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Joe Keshi. It was a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Choice International, under the leadership of an accomplished industrialist and entrepreneur, is introducing the Gree and Lontor franchise retail opportunity to Nigeria investment community. The franchise opportunity is for two brands, Lontor, known for their rechargeable products, and Gree products, which are the cooling systems brand. According to the brand owner, under the franchise offering, investors have been assured of over 35% return on investment.
Lontor and Gree are two products representing brands in the cooling business and rechargeable space, not new to the Nigerian market. This meeting is a call to an investment opportunity by way of Gree and Lontor franchise.
With over 100 unique products on display, the Gree and Lontor retail brand shops have recorded remarkable turnover and profitability over the past years, with yields of an average investment and ROI of over 50%.
Two strategic value proposition is up for offer. You can be one of the 6 major regional logistics centers franchisee across the political zones, or the brand shop owner for retailers, all with exciting return on investment.
With an initial capital outlay of $1 million, a warehouse, and distribution trucks to do milk runs, you can own any of the logistics centers in any of the regions of this country. So 20 million naira, you have a store, 150 to 200 square meters. You can access 15 million naira credit facility based on your initial deposit to stock up your store. There is a minimum turnover of six. You can turn over your principal 6 times in a year.
It is not just a business offering according to the proponents. It's an initiative to help rebuild the economy on the back of 2 quality brands.
The confidence can be shown today that we still want to call for more people to be back to their normal business. At the same time, we also show our partnership spirit that we come here to do business and we come here to look for our business partners. So let us work together, unite together to rebuild the economy of the countries.
The main thing for me is the quality, because as a business, you can't be buying items and then having to change them, after a year or 6 months and so on.
The small management says your income line are not limited to buying and selling because the stores will be built into service centers, which gives you opportunity to earn more from being a service provider on technical and maintenance under the Cool Man program.
And to some business news now, here's Melinda Kilami. Many thanks, Millicent. The Senate Committee on Capital Market promises to support the capital market with necessary laws to propel it to greater heights and strengthen investor confidence. The chairman of the committee, Senator Ibikune Amosu, gives this assurance during an interactive meeting with government agencies and interested parties in the capital market and financial sector. In the interactive session, which is an avenue for stakeholders to brainstorm on ways to strengthen the capital market, they say it will continue to function as a gateway to economic development of the country. Founding partners of the African Investment Forum have approved the postponement of this year's event to 2021 due to the global COVID-19 pandemic. The founding partners include the African Development Bank Group, African Export-Import Bank, Africa Finance Corporation, Africa 50, the Islamic Development Bank, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, as well as the Trade and Development Bank. The annual 3-day investment marketplace was initially scheduled to hold this month in Johannesburg, South Africa. In July this year, the AIF founding partners pledged to strengthen strategic partnership engagement and commitments to help reboost investment in Africa before the event was rescheduled. Now, starting from Friday this week, extractive companies and government agencies will no longer gather and submit data manually as the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NATI, begins the full automation of its audit management process. In a statement released today, NATI explains that the platform was developed after a series of assessments pointed to the need to move data gathering to an automated mode in order to aid submissions in real time, as well as secure and efficient environment. Despite a weak volume of shares transaction, the domestic stock market sustained positive sentiment, and that's the second day in the month, with an additional 4.39 billion naira increase in total value of listed equities at the close of today's trading session. Ekaite Hapia has more on today's trading activity.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. The first trading week of November is turning out to be a rewarding one for the investors at the domestic stock market. And that's because positive sentiments were sustained for a second day. Now, after some fluctuations in the course of midweek trading sessions, the bulls had the upper hand against its rival, the bears, as it stomped forward into its territory, which marks a moderate 0.03% gain on the NSE's main index. Although the gain recorded in today's trading session was minimal, as reflected on the sectoral performance chart, it still points to the fact that investors are finding their way into the equities market, which they consider as a more preferable option with better returns within a short period. Meanwhile, traders say they are optimistic that the market will perform better in the upcoming sessions this week, as more earnings results are expected to attract new investors into the market. Well, that's all for the stock market report. I'm Akaite Afia.
As business news, back to you, Millicent.
And the number of electoral votes are rising for former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, who is clearly in the lead in the race to clinch the White House. Biden is currently projected to win 253 electoral votes, following votes in the state of Michigan, compared to Trump's 213, further narrowing the president's prospects of making the needed 270 electoral votes to win the election. A while ago, the Democratic challenger, in an address, called for unity and bipartisanship, saying, "We are campaigning as Democrats, but I will govern as an American president." Meanwhile, President Trump has filed a lawsuit in Michigan State Court demanding the vote to be halted statewide until representatives from the campaign are provided meaningful access to observe mail-in ballots being opened and processed. Here's Simon Fusey with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The outcome of the US presidential election is on a knife edge, with Donald Trump and his rival Joe Biden neck and neck in key swing states. The incumbent, Donald Trump, claimed to have won and vowed to launch a Supreme Court challenge alleging electoral fraud, despite not pointing to any evidence.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop.
Earlier, Mr. Biden said he was on track to victory. Millions of votes remain uncounted and no candidate can credibly claim victory yet. The final result may not be known for days, as more than 100 million people cast their ballots in early voting before Election Day, setting the US on course for the highest turnout in a century.
We believe we're on track to win this election. You know, we could know the results as early as tomorrow morning, but it may take a little longer. As I've said all along, it's not my place or Donald Trump's place to declare who's won this election. That's the decision of the American people. But I'm optimistic about this outcome.
Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has ordered a military offensive to subdue the authorities in Tigray state following an alleged attack on an army base. Mr. Abiy accused the region's ruling party, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, of launching the attack. He said in a TV address the attack resulted in many martyrs, injuries and property damage. The cabinet has declared a state of emergency in the region for 6 months, while local authorities have also shut down electricity, telephone and internet services. Ivory Coast's government has accused the opposition leaders of an act of sedition after they announced a parallel administration in defiance of President Alassane Ouattara's election win. Video showing riot police surrounding the residence of Ivory Coast's opposition leader Henry Konan Bedi. The riot police dispersed the protesters after the government accused him of sedition for heading a transitional council announced the previous day. The Economic Community of West African States, the African Union and the United Nations have all urged the opposition to abandon the idea of a transitional council and engage in dialogue with the government. Ugandan police have arrested opposition leader Bobi Wine shortly after he handed in nomination papers for next year's presidential election. 15 people have been reportedly injured as Ugandan security forces dispersed crowds gathered to protest the arrest of Mr. Wine. Aides and witnesses said police bundled the politician into a van after smashing through the windows of his vehicle. The 38-year-old politician is seeking to end President Yoweri Museveni's power, which has lasted for more than a third of a century in February's poll. Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared Russia wanted to retain its superiority in the Arctic, planning to renew its icebreaker fleet to bolster its presence there. Moscow has stepped up its efforts to tap the region's commercial potential, including by increasing freight traffic on the Northern Sea Route, which runs from Murmansk in the Russian Arctic to the Bering Strait near Alaska. In recent years, Russia has also reopened abandoned Soviet military air and radar bases in the energy-rich region as it vies for dominance against traditional rivals Canada, the United States and Norway, as well as newcomer China. Hurricane Eta, one of the most powerful storms to hit Central America in years, has ploughed into Nicaragua, battering homes and infrastructure and threatening deadly floods. The US National Hurricane Center said Eta was an extremely dangerous Category 4 storm on a 5-step scale, bringing catastrophic winds, flash flooding and landlines. When it struck the coast, Eta was blowing potentially devastating winds of 140 miles per hour. Nicaraguan officials said there were still no reports of deaths or injuries. And finally, Chief Inspector Doreen Malambo of Zambia, currently serving in the UN mission in South Sudan, has been named the 2020 United Nations Woman Police Officer of the Year by the UN Department of Peace Operations.
The second day,
Ms. Malambo currently serves as a gender advisor in Juba, South Sudan, where she was first deployed in 2016, a year marked with widespread violence in the country. Working with the United Nations Population Fund, she helped establish the Stand Up for Rights of Women and Girls initiative that has helped to reduce and prevent sexual and gender-based crime in South Sudan. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Hello and welcome to Sports News. Confederation of African Football President Ahmad is to spend at least 5 more days in hospital in Cairo as he continues to recover from COVID-19. The 60-year-old tested positive for the virus last week and was hospitalized in the Egyptian capital with mild flu symptoms. The World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, has apologized and agreed to pay damages to France international Mamadou Sakho for a drugs ban in 2016. The Crystal Palace defender, who was a Liverpool player at the time, was investigated by FIFA and given a provisional 30-day ban in April 2016 after he's tested positive for the fat burner higanamine. In the UEFA Champions League, Timo Werner scored a brace as Chelsea stayed top of the group with an emphatic win over Stade Rennes. Erling Haaland scored twice as Borussia Dortmund trashed Club Brugge. 9 Dynamo's Gree players have contracted COVID-19 ahead of their home Europa League clash with Austrian side Wolfsberger on Thursday. The Croatian champions conducted an official test on Tuesday, and in addition to 4 players who had already contracted the virus, another 5 tested positive. That's it on Sports News. Millicent, back to you.
Thanks, Lumide. And the main news again. Ministers from the southwest region of the country today recommended thorough investigation by the federal government of the military's role in the Lekki toll gate shooting. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Stay with Channels Television, your home for the news, for further updates.